everybody, this is Bevan. Welcome to Bevan, a femme over 40 and her friends podcast. I'm your host, Bevan. I'm here with my co-host, Biscuit Reynolds. I've said my name 3 times. It's time to start the show. Today, I'm interviewing my friend Jennifer about burnout, because burnout is such a real thing that so many people, especially entrepreneurs and ambitious people, experience. And Jennifer, I did a great interview with her back in 2020, and she got totally burnt out. She was kind of like on the cusp of getting burnt out, and then I just was so inspired with her working her way back out of that, right? And a lot of times, like, we burn ourselves out, and there's a lot we need to heal in order to even get back in the game again. So she has so much wisdom to share on the podcast. I'm really excited for you to connect with it, but I want to teach on something first that I think will foundationally help you with this concept. So this is something I learned from Kyle Cease, who's a spiritual teacher I enjoy. You've got A, B, and C. This can apply to money or time, and it's really how you invest and what that investment's going to do for you. So A, money, or A, time is, imagine you got $1 million and you spent all of your time and your money partying and just, like, blowing it however you want to blow it, right? It's just having a time, having pleasure. It's the same as, like, if you were drinking Coca-Cola, right? Like, it kind of deteriorates your body. We know that, right? Like, and it's not something that's going to produce an investment, right? B, money, B, time, that's safety, right? So it's like and using that money to invest in real estate, which is something that you might go up in value over the course of maybe 10 years, right? There's this kind of safety and appreciation of that. So if you were using time, that's maybe like going to school. That's something that will probably help you, but it's not going to exponentially help you, right? But it's like a safe kind of investment. And then C, and that I think that the drink equivalent might be juice, right? Like, juice has some nutrients, but it's also got a lot of sugar, right? Like, it's a variable sort of nutrient, right? And then we go into C, money, time, or beverage, right? So that beverage equivalent is water. We need water to live. The more water we drink, the better we feel. The more water we drink, the better our cells reproduce, right? Our bodies are 80% water. And if you're an emotion person, if you're an empath or feel a lot, you need that water to move your emotions through you, right? But the C equivalent of money is like investing in yourself. It's like coaching programs. It's things that, like, ultimately create you as the investment. So the better you get, the better you produce. The same as with time, also with coaching programs or things that are really developing you as a person to be who you want to be in the world for you and for your unique work in the world. And I think what Jennifer has done a really good job of in her post-burnout recovery is investing C, money, and C, time in how she's going to replenish herself. So I hope that helps you get kind of a framework of what our discussion is talking about. But I just am so thrilled to introduce you or reintroduce you to Jennifer Axcell. Before we get on to the show, I want to tell you the best way to support this podcast is through my Patreon page. Patreon, patreon.com, is a membership support site. Mine is /FKDP, which stands for Fat Kid Dance Party, which is my aerobics class for anyone who feels left behind by mainstream fitness. If you've ever been called too much, too fat, or felt too awkward to dance, mine is the supportive class for you. It's super fun. My Patreon has, at any level of support, starting at $7 a month, you get access to all of my Zoom aerobics classes. And it also supports me creating this podcast for free. It supports all of my YouTube content, my blog at queerfatfemme.com. Today my friends were trying to convince me to start a Twitch channel. Who knows what's possible, right? All the things I get to do are entirely because of that Patreon support. So I'm so grateful. $25 a month is what I call the sustaining level. It's why this can be my job. It's why I can even do the podcast. $25 a month is my on-demand aerobics. So it's Fat Kid Dance Party Live is the tier. And I started it just like filming my real life aerobics classes, but in the pandemic times, there are no real life classes. And so I'm actually hiking into the woods, recording a fresh class for the on-demand and uploading it every week. So there's a fresh class every week. There's 6 classes total. A 10-minute, a 20-minute, 2 55-minute classes, a chair aerobics class, and a canna size class, which is slower, more repetitive choreography for use with an optional cannabis experience. It's super fun. I love getting to create these aerobics, and doing a fresh one every week means I am just constantly leveling up and doing something new and exciting for all of you. Plus bonus classes from other body positive instructors I enjoy. And Plus, it's a great way to support my work and keeps it sustainable. So thanks so much for considering Fat Kid Dance Party, patreon.com/FKDP. The link is in the show notes. I want you to imagine you're on the virtual porch with me and Jennifer, pulling up your favorite childhood blanket and cuddling up, and on with the show. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, Jennifer.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. I'm so excited. We're pandemic friends, which means we actually haven't met in real life, which feels so impossible because I feel like I've known you forever. But it goes to show you can have the energetics of real life friendship online. And what a great age that we're in, that despite a pandemic, we can reach across state lines and have friendship.
That's it. Now imagine how much more incredible it's going to be when we do actually get to be face to face. It's going to be mind blowing. I can't wait.
Oh, the hug. I can already feel it.
Oh yeah.
So good.
Big, long, juicy.
Mm-hmm. I like an uncomfortably long hug because you need 30 seconds to produce the serotonin. So you might as well do it, and like, if I'm going to take the risk of hugging someone, you better believe I'm going to be heart to heart. I'm going to be getting all that serotonin.
Let's do it. Count me in.
Okay, speaking of serotonin and mental health and all the good things, Jennifer, the first time I had you on my podcast, you were kind of in the process of burning out, and by kind of like you were in the process of like fully burning out, and your glow, I mean, you were already glowing, but like burning out, and like your glow up from then has been such a beautiful but uphill slog. And I am so excited to hear about your background and your experience with plant medicines across the board and how that's helped you heal. So give us a little background, Jennifer.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, that was very well put. A long, sluggish, uphill road to get to where I am at. And honestly, it feels so good to be on this side of that, knowing that this is not a destination. It is a lifelong journey. But I'm glad to be at this point of awakening and understanding of myself and how I view myself in the world, where the role my ego plays in how I think other people view me, and all of these things I know we're going to break down. But it's very interesting. Yet again, I find myself having my life changed by a plant medicine that I used to believe so much stigma about. And that's really the same thing that happened with cannabis, is taking one of my life's experiences, which was that traumatic car accident that left me on all these different opiates and really took my quality of life from me, finding so much healing and power in cannabis, and then dedicating my professional career to the cannabis plant and empowering other people to have access and know how to use it safely and effectively, to now be in a place where I'm wanting to do the same thing with psychedelics, with mushrooms, with psilocybin in particular, because that has taken me on a whole nother journey of exploration of trauma healing, and not just the PTSD that I had from the car accident, but really understanding in myself, this goes all the way back to childhood, and removing ego lenses I had of myself and trauma lenses, specifically tied to the fact that I am an identical twin. And it's a very unique and interesting that I want to be talking more about.
Wait, I just want to tell everyone, not only are you an identical twin, but you're Geminis. So
it's like 4 of us in the room.
Yes.
But it's interesting what happens as children in trauma in the sense of how our minds and bodies react to stimulus, sometimes stressful and painful, in ways that I was not prepared to handle and knew how to deal with, especially at a young age. And so much of that tied to me sharing a face with another human being. So not just fraternal twins, identical twins, where we share passions, interests, facial features, mannerisms, voice, eyes, nose, like so much stuff. And really, it wasn't until I fully realized as an entrepreneur the state of burnout that I was in that I turned to psilocybin. And it was actually working with veterans for so long in the cannabis space, involved in PTSD, and really looking at it from that post car accident Jennifer. So my adult life, and kind of, oh, I had done therapy and I'd done these things when I was a kid. And I was like, oh, that's my childhood. But going into this and realizing, having these epiphany moments, that a lot of my ambition, a lot of my drive, a lot of my professional acumen, that I can tie those directly back to being a twin, and how I have been trying to differentiate myself from my sister in ways that came easiest, which to me was my profession, what I did. And so much of that, like many of us, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're birthing businesses, right? This becomes a big part of our identity. And not that any of that is necessarily a bad thing, but when your identity and your wanting to achieve comes from an unhealthy place of wanting to be seen and heard and validated externally, because I was struggling to get that as a child, that had nothing to do with my sister, just me. For me, I had no idea how much that was still playing into my life 40 years later. So it's been a very interesting journey to get here, and a lot of pieces to take apart in there, but realizing it's my whole life is what I am taking a whole new perspective and lens to view through and heal and process, so that I can be the best version of me, and understanding that at the bottom of all of this, self-care is not selfish. If I'm not taking care of myself and prioritizing my own needs, knowing what those are, and then knowing how to ask for those and fill some of those and a lot of those myself, all these things I want to accomplish in my life, I'm going to be doing burned out if I don't get these things into check. So for me, it really has been life altering to change my perspective and say, I can do all of these things, just like I knew I could before, but I understand what motivates me. I have healthier boundaries with myself, and a lot of other things in the journey I know we will break down, but so much of that, I had to go so far back, I had no idea they were connected, yet they are.
It's amazing how the wounds from childhood are always going to chase us down till we learn the lessons.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, especially the things we thought we were over. And then we realized, oh no, you're not actually over it. You've just buried that and created this whole new narrative in your head around it. You've got to unwrap the narrative and what happened to you to create that narrative in the first place.
Yeah, and hold space for it. And I think what's something I've learned recently is that humility is one of the best things an entrepreneur can have, in terms of it's what I learned. I learned it from a podcast about success, about this person was humility, just being willing to start over, literally okay, we're doing something different. I feel like every day as an entrepreneur, there's something different on a platform I use, or a platform I'm using goes out of business, right? So many things happen that I'm constantly pivoting. And I realized, oh, humility is just recognizing your actual size, right? You're not better than anyone else. You're not worse than anyone else. And a lot of us who are raised in a matrix of oppression, right? Women, fat people, queer folks, Black, Indigenous, people of color, older folks, disabled folks, the list goes on. We're taught we're not enough, and we're never going to be good enough. And so we believe that. And then that takes our humility and hides it behind ego. And the ego is what gets in the way of you being willing to heal, because you're not willing to even see that something is wrong.
Yes. So, oh my gosh. Yes.
That story of oh, I handled this, I healed this, that's done, is only keeping you from healing.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. Just when you think you've arrived is when the next lesson comes to go, guess what? Arrived isn't a thing.
It isn't.
It.
You just get better.
Destination.
No, and you just get better at like handling it. And I think about burnout all the time as like a very expensive lesson. Like it costs a lot because you're so many, and this is also true like in success, like people sacrifice their health to get their career, and then they spend the rest of their life they spend all their wealth trying to get their health back. And like our bodies in many ways are non-renewable resources. So it's not.
Oh my gosh, yes. And you're right. The cost, there's the financial cost of having to fix your physical health. I definitely had to deal with that. I literally had to blow up my life. Other than changing my address and changing my husband, I had to change everything else. Mindset, lifestyle, everything, because the burnout and the stress of constantly just saying, I just got to put one foot in front of the other. I just got to do the next one. Just keep going. It felt like if I let the inertia die, I might too. I just had to keep going. And it was perseverance and endurance, but that was only pushing to get me there. And while I don't think endurance is a bad thing, I wasn't doing things for myself to provide the ability to have the endurance. I was just pouring from an empty cup over and over and over again. And I mean, that's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over again and expecting a different result. I did that for years. And I agree with you, especially as an entrepreneur. Humility isn't a weakness. It is a sign of strength to be able to say, I have improved upon, or I learned my lesson from, and this is what I'm doing differently. To say I have learned from this and improved, that takes a lot of strength and a lot of humility to be able to say, I didn't get it right the first time. Nobody does. There's always something that can be improved. So you're so right.
And there's something that can be improved. And also we're just constantly kind of repeating life in cycles, right? And when you don't learn the lesson, it's just going to pop back up somewhere else. And the more I've realized through pain that like either vision pulls or pain pushes, I'd rather be pulled by the vision. And so like following my intuition, cultivating the experience of my life where my intuition is strong. I know that I'm doing my best work when I'm in flow, but I'm not in flow state 24/7. I actually have to do a lot of self-care in order to be, including a lot of rest, in order to be receptive to the flow state. And then, just highly prioritized. I love that you were talking about like how your husband didn't change, and your address didn't change because like you had this like priority, you knew what was important in your life. And you're like, this other stuff is not allowing me to be my best for this relationship that's a priority in my life. And also you said boundaries with self, which is like, that was an aha moment I had like 2 years ago when I was reading a book called Boundaries. And it talked about boundaries, like all these boundaries with all these different people in your life, and then boundaries with self. And I was like, what?
Yeah, you're right. I mentally thought of boundaries like, this is protecting me. This is my house, and I have a yard around my house, and there's a fence around my yard, and I get to choose how much other people, how close to my house people get to come in. And for me, it was like, this is protection for my energy, for myself, for all of this. I didn't realize I needed to be protecting me from myself first and foremost, that I was the biggest abuser of my own boundaries.
Yeah.
And I had to start internally.
Yes. And like discipline is freedom, but discipline is like, it's a character revealer, just like money isn't good or bad. It just reveals people's character. And the same, and humility works both ways. Humility is like where you're at the bottom of the mountain and where you're at the top of the mountain. Like who are you? Are you a monster or are you a helper? Are you a leader? Right? Like, and who do you want to be in the world? Right. And that can be different for everybody, but I have a feeling if you're listening to this podcast, you probably want to be a healer and a helper in the world. But you got to heal and help yourself first. And like, one of my most important disciplines that I have is just like my daily habits, like the things I have to get done before all of like my pleasure things, right? Like it's before TV time. It's like I have my own little checklist. There's a woman I love on the internet, Jordan Page. She teaches about using a clipboard system with your children. And I was like, oh my God, that's what I do for myself.
Hey, if it
works, exactly. It's like, I have to check off all these things and then I can go have fun with my friends. And like, it's just really interesting to think about like, okay, I know I'm gonna, it's almost like a releasing self-deception, which I think is something I learned from my abusive alcoholic upbringing, like there's a lot of self-deception when you're raised around trauma as just a trauma response, right? Like, oh, it's all okay if I just pretend like it's okay. And like, I just forget the memories and you don't forget, your body keeps the score. And like, one of the beautiful things about healing with plant medicine is always revealing the truth to you, but it's also a softer place to land. And I find grieving using cannabis, grieving using psilocybin has been exponentially easier because I have a soft, and like, especially with psychedelic use, like with cannabis, I can smoke and be fairly functional, but like with psychedelics, like I am like intentionally blocking out time with no responsibilities so that my responsibility is looking inward and figuring out what's going on.
Yes. And that's where I found so much success as well. That inertia that I was talking about, that the busyness that so many of us find ourselves, that was one of the things out of COVID in particular, when all of a sudden a lot of things the things I wanted to do and the things I didn't want to do were no longer an option. It was just, stay at home and figure shit out, and process what you're going through. I found that some of the most healing times for me are actually in the pauses. So I have more capacity to be busy when necessary by intentionally adding pauses to my life. And intention is the key word in there. And that is my word for 2022. And maybe just forever as the motto of my life, is to be intentional in the things I'm choosing to do and the things I'm choosing not to do. And that includes setting time aside for myself to utilize the plant medicines, to say, this is my healing time in a setting. I do it in my closet. Nobody can reach me in there. It's safe. It's comfortable. I do this in a place where I can connect with myself and just give into it and really experience what the plant medicine has to give me, and blocking all of the busyness, my to-do list. If you're a parent and you've got kids and all these other things, all of your responsibilities, to set time aside just to say, I am my top priority for however much time this is. And I am carving this out intentionally for me to grow and heal and refill my cup, was huge. And it's not surprising, but interesting for me to see. It's a lot of those things. I find the thing we are most afraid of, like I said, I thought stopping meant death. It was death to the inertia, which as an entrepreneur, you're constantly building up momentum, right? That if I paused that or slowed down, everything would fall apart. And that was resting on my shoulders because it was my business, right? So it's interesting that it's actually in the pausing and the intentional slowing down where I have found the most healing.
100%, 110%. When I was first endeavoring to be an aerobics instructor, part of my inspiration was Richard Simmons. Obviously, for obvious reasons, but like that podcast came out, Missing Richard Simmons, in 2016 when I had the idea to do my own aerobics class, which I'd never even considered it before. But hearing how he ultimately burned himself out, I was like, wow, he sounds like an energy healer who has no spiritual hygiene. And then as I have endeavored into the world and met more people who knew him and worked with him, that is 100% the case. Like he's a clairvoyant that I know through a friend of a friend. A friend's experience with him. He came in, I'm going to just secondhand tell this story. He came in to build some kind of entertainment system in Richard's house. And he was flirting with him and saying I know about your new tattoo. And it was this, he couldn't have known it, but you know what I mean? And yet he did. He knew exactly what it was. He knew where it was. And of course he used it to flirt because he was, he was like that. Hot like that. I've always been wanting to be the kind of unabashed flirtatious person, but I'm a Capricorn. I'm a little too chill. Anyway, whatever. All that to say, when you're a clairvoyant, when you have any kind of extra sensory connection, or you're an empath, where you're receiving more energy, you just have to be even more intense about your spiritual hygiene. And that's a form of discipline. It's in my daily habits, right? And so like really paying attention to what do you need in order to create the container, right, for your life. And I've heard someone say like the first 40 years of your life is like creating the container, and the second 40 years is like filling it. Right?
Ooh, I love that. And having turned 40 during the pandemic, that resonates with me. And it's interesting you say that, because that is essentially kind of the platform I am moving forward with this kind of burnout recovery, and what am I doing with this? And that was the same conclusion I came to for myself, is this energetic cup that we have. A lot of us, the way I know I would rest on the weekends, meaning I did nothing. I sat in the front of the TV, maybe did social media. I started getting a little bit better about turning my phone off on the weekends. I was just doing nothing, expecting that to be the rest I needed. And then surprised that I was going back to work on Monday, still tired. And I was tired of being tired, and realizing that the energetic cup and refilling that is a two-pronged process. One of those is understanding what are the holes in your cup that are draining you too quickly, and how do you prioritize what's important energy drainers and what are not important energy drainers, and reprioritizing that. But then the other part of that was refilling the cup. So once I've plugged the holes, what am I doing to actually refill it? And that's where I think a lot of people fail to know enough about themselves and what their needs are. I know I didn't. I just thought, well, this is rest. Vacation is rest. But no, it was me needing to figure out what actually fuels my soul, so that I am doing things that my cup overfloweth, and I am acting and moving out of a place of excess, if you will, and spending that where it needs to go, instead of working with the crumbs I had down at the bottom and expecting that to be enough to do all the things I want to do. So I love, wherever you heard that, please let me know, because that is exactly what I found out for myself, and I'm moving forward with, in a level of understanding, is it's having a firm cup with not too many holes, and figuring out what is the energy refilling aspect of that. And I am excited for the other half of my life to be experimenting and finding more things that refill my cup, and then utilizing the excess to do something great for the world.
100%. We serve from our overflow.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
When you live a life of abundance with like good self-awareness, like age isn't about like wisdom. Like wisdom comes from applied experience and evaluated experience, like looking back without staring, like, oh, I noticed when I just watch TV all weekend, I don't feel regenerated. But when I like chunk out some time to go be outside, and when I chunk out some time to like take a good long bath and do some water healing, or like if you're a fire sign, sitting in front of a fire for 30 minutes once a month is so cleansing and so important. I think it's important for everyone, but really fire signs for real. But like just spending time, for you, an air sign, outside with the wind and the air, right? And everyone needs outside time. We're all just like, our bodies think that we're in the 1700s still. So we've evolved this, we've evolved a whole society with our brains that is actually really toxic to our bodies. So depression and anxiety are coming from like a society that ultimately isn't one size fits all. And yet they want us to believe that way. But like figuring out for you what actually fills your cup. How did you do that? Did you like journal on it, or did you just know? How did you like make those decisions to start shifting from burnout weekends to replenishment time, very intentional replenishment, is I think kind of how you shifted?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And it's not a short answer. Like I said, it had to start with addressing my physical needs, because I was on the fast track to a heart attack or a stroke or something else. I could feel it. Just the way I was moving, how my systems were functioning. I knew it. My stress levels it was affecting my sleep. My hair was falling out. I mean, everything. My body was crashing, and I had no choice but to readdress what that looked like. So I was vegan prior to COVID. Then during COVID, I emotionally ate through my stress, which was a lot of processed, oh, it's vegan, there's no animal products in it, so that makes it healthy. That's bullshit. So really, it was changing my mindset and saying, food is the foundation of my fueling my body so that I can physically and mentally and emotionally accomplish these things. I can't do that if my body is crying out for help and I'm not listening. So it was being more intentional in what I ate. So I'm now plant-based. So a lot of the processed, pre-packaged, fried, meat replacement foods that were so easy and comforting at a time when life felt really overwhelming, I had to change my mindset to, the vegetables and all the things that maybe aren't as exciting. It's not about that meal. It's about what this fuel for my body is going to help me accomplish. And I felt a significant impact very early into the process. That's how nutrient deficient I was. So addressing that, and then out of a place where I started to feel like I had a little bit more capacity, because I also quit my job. I left the nonprofit that I founded and had built so much of my identity around, and nonprofit burnout is no joke because it's about serving people and all the people I was afraid to let down by stepping down. And prioritizing myself felt selfish. And I had to address in myself, why does it feel so selfish to put myself first? So I had to address all of those things. But when it came to, so it was addressing the foundation, plugging those holes for me. That was the first part. Plug the holes that are emptying all of your systems. Then it was trial and error. What are things I think I enjoy? And try it. And not go into it with the mindset of, I have to be good at this. I just have to try it and see, check in with myself. And it's that self-awareness. How do I feel? Am I feeling nervous going into this? Am I feeling creative? Am I feeling energized? How do I feel in doing this? And that started with just going out for walks, getting some vitamin D, getting out of my apartment, mask on, and I live in a downtown urban area. So going deliberately to the park. And I'm lucky to live in Colorado where I could drive up to the mountains and escape my day-to-day to ultimately realize the vastness of nature and how small I was in all of that. Helped me to put into perspective all of the things I was going through that felt life ending at certain points, to realize that there's so much out there I'm not in tune with because I am so focused. I was drowning. So getting into the vastness of nature was a big one for me. And whether that's me smoking a joint in the forest, or I am walking my dog in the park behind me, or I'm just sitting outside on my patio, intentionally breathing and taking in the things around me and getting outside of my own mind and my narrative to experience those. And ultimately, all of that, to do that meant being present. So for me, it was trial and error of finding things where I could be present in that moment, enjoying what I was doing without any ties to an outcome, without any ties to, so like painting in the Botanic Gardens. I'm not a painter. I don't profess to ever be good at that, but I didn't do it because I was good at it. I did it because I wanted to do something creative. I wanted an expression, and it was for me, not for anyone else even to see. So going into all this trial and error was, I don't have to be good at it. I don't have to achieve anything. I just want to do this be present in that moment, and then be grateful and appreciative for the opportunity to do that and how it makes me feel. And if all those come together and I go, this was awesome, do it some more. Play on that a little bit. And just, it is a trial and error. And I think it's different for everybody. But for me, it was, I needed a creative outlet and I needed to connect with nature. And whenever I can combine the two of those, magic happens.
I love that. I think that's so true for me too, is just being out in nature it's like connected me to my wildness and like my essential self in so many ways. And like, also in many ways, I think about like in this time of the pandemic, it feels so stressful, right? And I think there's this like, we're in like the beginning, not being the first quarter of 2022. And I feel like there's this intense rush to go back to normal when in fact, the environment is telling us, no, you can't go back to normal. The virus, which viruses are older than people, it takes so little for it to mutate, and yet it is rapidly mutating. So it's our vaccines can't even keep up with it, right? So we have this like rush to go back to normal, but actually, when I think about the vastness of the human experience, like people have lived on this land for 15,000 years. Like, even though like white settler colonialism only came to where I live like 200 change years ago, like, and it's bananas to really think about like how long the US has existed, which is only a couple hundred years, you know?
A blip in the timeline.
Yes. And yet we think the almighty dollar is something we should worship. We have to get back to work. What if we can't, right? Like, we'll still like, if you're still lucky enough to be alive and not disabled by long COVID, like you'll still be okay, right? Like in a few years. And I just don't think people are good collateral damage for the economy, right? And so thinking about that and like being in wildness and allowing it to change my perspective has rooted me into my values so much that like I'm not so worried about what other people are doing. I have friends, good friends in my life who like take the pandemic as seriously as I do. I have good friends in my life who take their self-care and their healing as seriously as I do. And that's, to me, like, that's my pace setter, right? Like, I want to be running alongside people in life who understand service. Like, I love your heart to serve. Like, all of the work you were doing in your nonprofit is so valuable. And it's something you're building on for how you're teaching about burnout now, you know? And like, unfortunately, sometimes as teachers, we have to like go the way and then we get to show the way. But like, we teach what we most need to learn. Like, a Fat Kid Dance Party aerobics is my practice, right? Like, it's like I'm inviting people into the thing I'm going to be doing 3 times a week for the rest of my life, right? Like, please join me in my aerobics class because I need it too. And I also recognized when I was setting up like my boundaries, my container for this class, I saw how Richard Simmons burnt himself out. And so I said, okay, well, how many times a week do I think I can do this without burning myself out? Because like, when you're in flow state and you're channeling, I think you're using more energy than just like showing up to work and 9 to 5 and data entry, right? Like, so I am like, I need to replenish. Like, I need a lot to refill that. So I was like 3 times a week to teach the class. Then it gives me a couple more days a week for choreography and for taking other people's classes because I'm still inspired by other people. And then also like all sorts of other time to be in my creative mind. I love that you were talking about the painting class where you're letting go of outcomes and you're just having fun with the creative process. Like, that's how I feel like puzzles are. Like, as someone who's such a high achiever, because as a high achiever, I think you probably relate to this. As a high achiever, I'm like used to just like racking up scores on things that are not that important to me, right? Because I have something to prove. But instead, if I choose to spend my time on a puzzle, which is not something I'm going to get an award for, I just have to simply enjoy the moment. Like, it allows my brain to be in that like beautiful place where it's more receptive to the bigger ideas that, like, frankly, if you're willing to slow down and connect to your intuition and allow that higher wisdom to come through you, it makes everything easier. So does self-care.
It was a lot of self-care Sundays, which I would love to talk about if there's time.
Oh, absolutely. Give us your recipe for self-care Sunday, because I love the way that you use your psilocybin very intentionally.
I will. But suffice to say, it was a lot of self-care Sundays for me to realize I needed to redefine success for myself as an achiever. What does success really mean for me? And that has definitely changed. And also seeing the gift that was COVID when we were all forced to look at our lives differently, and we get to choose how much of our old lives do we want to put back in. Now that things are opening up, I chose to use that as the springboard for, I want things to be different. But that was a lot of these self-care Sundays to get to the realization of what was I trying to prove, and all of that achieving and success the way I used to have it defined. So my self-care Sundays really was setting the intention to carve time out for myself that was uninterrupted by the realities of life, disconnecting myself from all of that for a moment, a few hours, whatever my mind, heart, body, soul needed on that day to express. And what I have found, so my burnout was so bad, my depression was so bad. When I get to those bad places, and frankly, I don't even need to get to the rock bottom where I was in December 2020 to realize this. I now know what my check engine lights are. I know those warning signals better. So before I get to empty, I know when the areas I need to pay a little bit more attention to and refuel. But the physical act of caring for myself becomes the last of my priorities. So I stop showering, brushing my hair, eating period, let alone eating well. And just my physical self is not a priority. And that shows up in those various different ways. So interestingly, again, where I found so much healing is doing the thing I struggled with the most. So I locked the bedroom door. My husband knows, don't bother me, take the dog. This is my time. And something about having that door locked so that I cannot be accessed. My phone's not in there. I'm disconnected. And especially during COVID, that's where I started learning this in my closet. If you can do this outside, great. But I was like, okay, what can I do in my bedroom, in my house, if I can't leave, that I can easily do kind of wherever I'm at? And that is to do kind of a spa day as well. So I take the plant medicines. I use both cannabis and psilocybin, both microdose, and I put them together. I really like doing an edible. And then using my vape pen or a joint, both in an uplifting chemovar and something that's a little bit more mellow, so that I can kind of tailor, am I going into a really dark place? Do I want to come out of that? Or am I comfortable going into this dark place? And the inhalation gives me a little bit more of that control. And I take a bath. And I sit there and I am loving on my body and saying affirmations as I'm dry brushing, and I am allowing these feelings to come through, and I've got spa music on, and I am ritualizing the physical act of caring for my physical self as a way to honor myself in this process of healing and growth, and knowing that, is a face mask going to change my life? No, it's not. And self-care isn't just baths, but for someone who struggles to care for their physical self, that was a big piece of this for me, was to make that ceremonial, if you will, and really honoring that, using bath products that I love, and just things that made me feel good in the process, and figuring out what that was.
And treating your body like a temple, like you're really acknowledging the body as your literal body temple. Like it's the only one you're ever going to get. And we're taught to use it as a tool for capitalism rather than the access point for our spirit to be in the earth plane. Like, I mean, if we want to look at things in our own divinity, which is, I think, my biggest lesson from the plant is our divinity. Like when I'm on a good, like, I like to call my microdosing to like I would call it like microdose level, where I don't feel it. Then like I'm going to see Dolly Parton's face in the moon, maybe. But I'm not, it's like I'm almost high, but not high. I don't like that one. Then there's a party dose where like I'm dancing, I'm like a little high vibe, I'm feeling a glimmer, right? Like maybe not seeing tracers, but like definitely feeling a glimmer, feeling the medicine. And then like the next level up is like seeing the tracers, being a little more psychedelic. Like I have to have, like, I'm very prepared because like there's going to be snot running out of my face and all that. I'm very phlegmy. And can't have the dairy. And I'm like, but then there's like the talking to God, like I probably shouldn't go anywhere, I need to lay in the bed, like, you know, which is good, but they're all different levels, and understanding the medicine and dosing well. I also like to take so like in that time, like that is where I have a mirror exercise I do that you might love. I try to look at myself, and this is when I'm just using cannabis too. Like, it's like a new up level to just saying, I love you in the mirror and looking yourself in the eyeballs. It's literally looking yourself in the eyeballs and looking for your own divinity, allowing that to be reflected back through you and as you. That's a boss level. I learned this from Deidre, actually. It's a boss level of like recognizing and seeing yourself. But that is what I think the plant offers. The plant loves us so much, and it raises us to the vibration of love. And like, that's something I think we're unlearning with all this trauma release, is like just being present with your loving new version of yourself, to be present for the harder stuff you went through as a child or a young person, or even yesterday, right? Like these like times where we're processing and we're connecting and we're healing and we're allowing and we're being, because a lot of times, like when you were talking about your process of burning out, you thought like you would die if you left that nonprofit. Like, and it's a thing. I mean, fear is just false evidence appearing real. Like your brain is making you believe that this is going to end your life. And like, if you're just willing to like stick it out 90 seconds at a time, you may feel like you're going to die. But like after those 90 seconds, if you can breathe through it, you're birthing a new version of yourself. It's an ego death. It's not a real death.
Well, yes and no, because I was back to a place of suicidal ideation, because I was so heartbroken and also so afraid of letting people down. And there were times in my brain where I didn't believe there was any better way to go, that I couldn't live with the ramifications of leaving and what that would mean. So it was both for me.
I want to amend that. Can fully identify with suicidal ideation because of letting people down and feeling so ashamed and feeling like I couldn't go on. But that is like, it's one of the check engine lights. Like when you're suicidal, that's a check engine light. Like you're supposed to enjoy life. Like you're supposed to feel good. When you're feeling good, you're feeling God. So I'm glad you said that, because that is an important clarification. Like, get yourself through those moments, like have your tools. I have a whole list of things. I have a whole episode, actually. I don't know what number it is, but there's a whole episode of like how to make that list. But there's so much better things to do than to relieve the earth plane of you. We need you. You're alive in 2022 or whenever you're listening to this for a reason. But psilocybin and cannabis use has been what has helped me make life worth living in the next few moments, right? Like just getting through minute by minute sometimes is all you can do.
Yep, that's it. So this is why I had to change everything, because my life got me to that point. And what I realized with the help of the plant medicine and doing these self-care Sundays and processing a lot of my grief, the loss of identity and a lot of those things as well, is it's an inside job. So much of this, I got myself to that burned out place. And I actually felt very empowered, because I realized I got myself there. That means I also am the only one who can get me out of this. Nobody can do this for me. So I just need to do this. I have to. And it's interesting working through This Is Jane project and veterans with Leap 411, with other people who have hit their rock bottom, whether it's burnout, whether it's trauma, PTSD, but to have hit your place where you have no other choice but to do the work. Those are some of the strongest people I know, because you're, like myself, still alive to talk about it, because you had no other choice but to do this. It was either do the work or die.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose to do the work because there were no other choices for me. And I am so grateful to be at this stage of that. And this is why I want to pay this forward, because I don't want other people to get to that place before they realize how much power they have within themselves to take themselves out of those dark places. It is prioritizing us, ourselves, and doing the things that we need to do to move forward largely. And what the plant medicine made so clear for me is just how powerful my brain is. That when you think about the way placebo pills work, sugar pills, literally in blind clinical trials, people's symptoms will get better if they believe they've had the correct medication. Our brains can literally reverse disease effects in our bodies simply by believing something. So if our brains are that powerful to manifest in our bodies the result of what our brain believes to be true, the plant medicine made me realize we can use that to overcome, to refuel. If we use that for good, our accomplishments, what we can actually accomplish and the things we can do are largely limitless. There's so much we can do if we are utilizing our brains, speaking truth and abundance and all of these things. Our mindset and the way we talk to ourselves is so important. And I had to put those things into check. What was I believing about myself? And what was I believing how the world saw me? And what were the things I needed to change in that for myself that wasn't about anyone else? And live out of that place instead. And the plant medicines, that's where that internal divinity, I'm like, oh my gosh, the things I am able to do is almost scary, but it's true. And that attracting versus chasing and all of this stuff that seemed so out of reach, and oh, that, just in the past I thought, oh, that's not science. That's not just like plant medicines. I didn't believe something I hadn't experienced for myself. And I'm just so grateful to have experienced these things for myself now, because I got out of my own way and fought against the stigma that I didn't realize I had until I started. And be at a point where I'm like, I wish I had done this sooner, but that's not a should on myself. As my mom says, don't should on yourself. I should have, I shouldn't have. It's not about that. I'm here now and I'm learning these lessons. And what do I pay forward out of the abundance from having reached my bottom and dug myself out of that to be at the place that I'm at now? And that's really why I love having conversations like this, because I know I'm not alone in this. I'm just the most vocal in my own life right now about what all of this work means for burnout, specifically entrepreneurial burnout, but for all of us surviving the last 2 years and figuring out where we want to go. The great resignation is also the great reevaluation. And I am not the only person right now figuring out the Jennifer I want to be moving forward. And the plant medicines are helping me to realize how much control I have of that if I actually surrender. So it's interesting how the dichotomy of the two opposing forces, actually the surrender is so empowering and so powerful.
My favorite gesture for surrender is just to open your arms really wide and put your heart into the sky, and you just release. This is surrender to me. I learned this from Iyanla Vanzant, and it changed how I experience surrender. And there's so much. I don't even have a controlling personality type. A lot of people, there's different types of personalities, and some people just really like to be in charge of stuff. That's not me. But I used to be that way because I was so afraid. And like, and it was ego stuff, mostly like afraid, trying to control people's perceptions of me. But the more I can just release that and just experience being Bevan in the world, warts and all, right? Like just really accepting myself. I think plant medicine is so good for shadow work and like recognizing the parts of ourselves that are hardest to love. And our capacity to love others is equal to our capacity to love the hardest to love parts of ourselves. And I see that work in all of my relationships. I can see the people who have been willing to do that work and people who have not. And just like kind of, I want to just shout out the neuroplasticity we have. Like, this is what I was starting to tell you at the beginning, before we started recording. So our brains are wired, like there's so much about our brains we don't know. Brain science is fascinating. Our brains are like wanting to create new neural pathways, but it's hard, it's uncomfortable to do that work. But psychedelics help, because essentially we're all just like salt water with electricity running through us, and the psychedelics help us create new connections. And if you pair psychedelic use with mindfulness exercises, the neuroplasticity created from the psychedelics actually like helps to rewire your brain. So it's like, and it's, for me, it's like not even the times when I'm like shrooming, right? Like if I'm just, I like to just make sure, like, especially in the winter, like every couple weeks, I'm having some experience with psilocybin, whether it's a little teeny tiny microdose. I just want my brain to keep growing. Like I wake up in the morning after a trip and I just know my brain is growing, right? Like I can feel it, you know, and you need a ton of water because you want to be moving things through you. And you want to be, when I'm creating an intent, and it's intentional, right? Like I have to be really intentional. I want a clean environment. I want all five senses, a good thing to smell, good like whole foods, plants usually to eat. And like just really curating an experience. Maybe have some questions I want to ask the universe, and I have my journal, or maybe I just want to have a good time. And that's also a valid end result. It's just, you know, like when after my dad died, having I had that Saturday already blocked out to have a psilocybin. And I was like, thank God, you know, like I need it. Like I need this buoy of my mood. And I deserve this buoy of my mood. Right. And just being intentional about using it almost like a vitamin, right? A supplement, a way that my brain is using plant medicine, just like it uses the plant medicine in my supplements, like to get better.
Absolutely. And intention is everything, but I'm not tied to the result. The intention is to go into it and heal in some way. But there's some days that's me doing circles, spinning and dancing to the spa music. Sometimes it's buckets of tears coming out. Sometimes it's, I have my journal handy all the time, and it's not, sometimes it's journal prompts, and other times it's what is spinning around in my mind right now that is preventing me from being present right now. Is it my to-do list? Is it what's coming next? Or, ooh, I had an epiphany, I want to remember that for later. I write it down that I can always come back to it if I want to, but it frees up space in my mind to say, I don't have to think about that right now because I've written that down. I can come back to that if I want to. And interestingly enough, I tend to not come back to those things because they're really not as important as my brain narrative at the moment is making them out to be, that is taking up the space for me to be present and mindful, and then go into myself and dig some of this shit up. And how comfortable in some of these downloads I've been getting, I'm like, ooh, that is really strong, really heavy. I can only take a small amount of that, and that's okay. And other times I'm like, all right, let's go there. Let's do this. Let's just keep going and see what happens out of that. I'm intentional, but not tied to the performance or what the outcome is. So I love that you're doing the exact same thing, because I think that is very much part of that intention, that you need to go in with it. That especially as your first time, if you don't know what to expect, that unknown is scary. But I think what's even scarier is going in with the wrong intention, and being tied to the outcome and then being disappointed. Because there's so much to learn from surrendering to the unknown.
There's so much to learn from surrendering to disappointing yourself or other people too.
Ooh.
I feel like I had this aha moment like earlier when you were talking about like being suicidal because you let people down, and I'm like, oh yeah, actually, like I never realized it that way, but like, yeah, I've let a lot of people down and it feels sad and hard, but you know what, maybe those aren't my people, you know, like I really think there is something to the momentum of entrepreneurship, because momentum really favors people who continue to put in the action. Yes. And when you are acting, and Tony Jones, who's one of my favorite affirmations singer, I think my favorite affirmation singer, we'll give her that favorite, put on her crown. She's amazing. Every album she has is fantastic. It's what I like to listen to before I'm glimmering, because I want my mind, because your mind is so like, our minds are available. You know what I mean? Like we don't think about that, but like, especially when you're doing psychedelics or plant medicine, your minds are available. And so if you're curating your experience, I like to curate affirmations because I want that to be what my brain is thinking. And then maybe in the middle of the trip, I want it to be no music, no lyrics music. So like, I like Bill Evans, like a good jazz album. The album You Must Believe in Spring, I started listening to it simply because like just that tagline, I want this in an archway in my home, you must believe in spring. Because times like this, like right now we're in bleak midwinter, like I am just constantly saying this to myself as I see little signs of spring, even though it still looks like it's like bare and it's cold, barren stick season, I still believe in spring. I know it's coming and it will always come. And that's the thing about depression. If you believe you're going to be depressed forever, you will be. If you believe you will not be depressed forever, you will be, right? Like, or you will not be. So like having like that moment in the middle with like the no lyrics and just like connecting entheogenically or just chilling, vibing, whatever. And then like the affirmations music afterwards. But Tony Jones has a great lyric that says I think it's her song called Worth Ethic. And that's what she's working on. It's not her work ethic, it's her worth ethic. Ooh, and she says like the wins from Team Burnout are bossy. But the thing is you can't sustain your momentum if you're focused on if you're just trying to do too much, right? Yeah. So you have to keep enough activity. It's about like almost like driving a stick shift. You want to like just be in gear 1, see if you can bring it up to gear 2 and still maintain, see if you can bring it up to gear 3 and still maintain, right? But like really figuring out that like there is no such thing as work-life balance, because that's assuming that you have to choose. You shouldn't have to choose. You should just get to live.
That assumes you can have equal of both. And I'm not sure that exists.
No, you can't. You got to figure out what your work is in the world, which may not be the thing you trade your time for money for. Yeah. But like, that's how, and you just prioritize that in some way. Like, cause I don't know, I guess maybe some people don't like their work in the world could be raising boss kids who are going to make a difference in the world, right? Your work can be so many things, but like it's something you're devoted to and you're showing up for, but like also still being devoted and showing up for yourself. Yep. And like and really handling things as a 411 call before it's a 911 call, right? Yes, like and those check engine lights, like figuring that out. That's a good journal question for anyone out there. Like write a journal of like what are your 911 moments and what are your like check engine light moments, and like learning how to discern that is a huge step towards avoiding burnout. Yeah, there's so much like I think we get programmed for in a society that is not, it's not one size fits all. Like there's so much human diversity, it should be one size fits you. Like what is a life that's worth living for you? And like I mean, I don't know, like as someone who just deeply wants to invest in serving the world and making it better because I was here, I also have burned out and been suicidal and had my life fall apart so many times that like I'm like, okay, not willing to do that, like want to be willing to live in this world. And if I'm so worried about disappointing people that I don't create or try or attempt, because like it's supposed to be failing forward, right? It's like we learned this from our Silicon Valley bros, like these like entitled white men who feel like they're like minimum viable product. Start before you're ready. They don't care if they fail because they were raised to believe that they're going to be okay no matter what. And when you're not raised to believe that, you have to raise yourself and you have to be okay like failing and disappointing people, disappointing the parent that you're most like. Tony Robbins always asks, who's the parent you're most worried about disappointing? And like I realized, of course, it's my mother. And but like sometimes I've disappointed my mom by like 8:30 in the morning. And like, I'm like, wow, okay, my biggest fear has come to pass and I'm still okay. Here we go. Let's keep going.
Yeah. Well, figuring out parent pleasing as the root cause of my people pleasing And some of the other things was a biggie for me. I've had to add some new boundaries to that. I'm still unpacking that. I'm still understanding that. What are the pillars I put my parents on? As my parents, they should know how to not just emotionally love me, but physically embody the love that I need. And some of these other things that I'm realizing my expectations. I'm trying to meet their expectations, but what are the expectations I put on them that I need to give grace for them as well? That's a two-way street. But one of the things that has helped me, thinking of a journal prompt as well, and it's not even a journal prompt, but I got really good, well practiced, if you will, at asking the question why. So not just how am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this way? And when we can really just on everything ask why. Well, blah, 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 blah. Okay, why? Well, yada, yada. Okay, why? And just keep going down that path of why am I feeling this way? How far back do I need to go? But be questioning yourself in that way, not in a judgmental path of consciousness, but in a way to seek to understand, why am I feeling this way? And the more I can understand why I'm feeling a particular way, I can understand why something triggers me. And then I can go down to the path of why does that trigger me and where does that come from, and keep going further. So sometimes the best thing to do is just to sit there, say to myself, honestly, how am I feeling? And go down the ask the question why rabbit hole of myself, holding the proverbial mirror up to my face and being honest with myself of why I'm feeling those things. If with the understanding that perception is our reality and everybody's perception is different, right? You see a car accident, people on 4 different corners of that intersection are all going to see that differently. We all have a different perception, but those are our realities. And realizing that I could change my perception was a game changer. And that is, self-talk and affirmations and doing the healing work and unpacking the ego and our trauma lenses. But it was also, to what you're saying, cognitive behavioral therapy. It is, what patterns am I starting that are helping me and achieving, and how do I slowly accomplish those things utilizing positive reinforcement and stuff like that. So apps, I found apps have been very helpful. I have affirmation apps that remind me different things through the day, and I have CBT apps that help me start a new habit. So if you're brand new and you're saying, I need to control alt delete my life right now, which if you're over 40 listening to this, you know what control alt delete is.
Oh my God, you're right.
She's like, what?
Millennials. That's a reset button.
So fellow millennials, it's the reset button of your life. There are really like hands-on tools that can help you in this process. Mood trackers, and you can do that in a journal by yourself with colored pencils as a creative outlet to create a bullet journal. I mean, there's different ways to do this, but holding myself accountable and realizing that I am the one who gets to set my perspective changed everything. So my intention is to have a perspective that moves me into a life of abundance, and living out of that instead of wallowing and shaming and shoulding on myself for where I've come from, and utilizing those as momentum to propel me forward into who I want to be instead of holding me back from who I know I can be, that I was struggling to see was even possible, and realizing I was the one limiting myself. My self-limiting beliefs that I didn't even realize I had were a major part of what got me there.
Yes, absolutely. It's like a scarcity mindset that makes you think disappointing people or losing your momentum is going to ruin your life, when in fact, like, sometimes you do need that Control Alt Delete, and you know what? The right people will still be around, and it will all be okay. And I think I want to wrap this up with just like a little bit of an inquiry into your experience as an identical twin.
Ooh, yeah, that's gonna be like a four podcast breakdown to get into all of it. But yes.
Okay, well, let's make a date at some point. We'll really deep dive into identical twinness. But my first question is, because you're blonde, I assume that probably you were blonde when you were growing up, and you were blonde twins. So did you really relate to the Sweet Valley High series?
Well, this particular shade of blonde I pay for. Yes, I was a blonde, and I did love Sweet Valley High because, of course, twins and all of that, and the 80s and 90s. Yes, of course, of course.
Are you more of a Jessica or an Elizabeth?
Oh, geez, I haven't even thought about that in so long. I don't know. I think as much as I identified, my biggest struggle with identical twins in particular, there's always an alpha and a beta twin. And I'm the alpha twin, and that bears its own responsibility. That is where the narrative for me that I needed to dim my light on a regular basis came from, because my strength, my assertiveness, and my ability to accomplish was for my sister that struggled with a lot of those things, a direct comparison to her inability to do that. And so I know from an early age, we repeated second grade because my sister wasn't ready to move on. And rather than have one twin in a higher grade than the other, we both did second grade again. So whether I was consciously aware of the trauma that caused in our relationship, I was conscious of my sister becoming what felt like a ball and chain around my life at 7, 8 years old. And so I, without realizing it, was fighting against being a twin because I didn't want to be tied to her life. So it wasn't that I was like, oh yeah, I love these books and we're going to be those. And, we played tricks in high school. We dated brothers. Like, we did some of those quintessential, you would think, twin things. But it wasn't something I look back fondly and go, oh, wasn't that so great? And being a twin has not necessarily been a positive experience for me. I'm really hoping to change that in my adult life. But what that change actually looks like, we will see. Is that going to be the best friend to my sister that she always wanted? Maybe not. And I'm okay with that. But
twinning people as a form of self-care.
That's it. I've never lived up to the expectations that she wanted of me, where there's a lot of codependency in twins, especially identical twins. Every major milestone, including getting my first period and some of these, my sister was around for everything. Every milestone I celebrated with someone, and inherently the world sees us as a set. My family saw us as a set, and she and I, whether we liked it or not is a different story, saw ourselves as a set. And for me, unpacking what it means to, even then being somebody's wife, to be somebody's other half is what I have been fighting against for as long as I can remember, whether I knew I was consciously doing it or not. So there are some positive twin things I'm like, oh yes, this was great. But on the whole, my experience wasn't anything like the books. It wasn't anything like the movies. Not in the positive ways those reflect, but they don't show the codependency issues where the twins are wearing the exact same outfits because they want everybody to see that they are part of only half of a pair. I never wanted to be half of a pair. I wanted to be a whole of a single. So I saw myself in some of that, in the blonde, and maybe in some of the characteristics, and ooh, wouldn't that be fun? But that just was not my twin experience.
And this is true for relationships, but probably also true for being a twin and any kind of relationship, actually. But when you're a whole and you've worked on making yourself whole, and I think that's part of like creating that cup, right? So you're not a sieve, right? You're whole,
right?
Then you come with another whole and you become infinity, right? It's not two. It's the infinite power of the divine flowing through both of you individually. Because even if you are a twin, you're still an individual soul having your own soul's experience, and probably destined to contrast with the other twin so you can grow. Jennifer, you are a delight, a treasure, a seeker on the path, and a healer, and truly, I think, going the way so you can show the way. Will you tell folks how they can stay in touch with you and learn more about all the things that will roll out from your magical universe?
Yes, please. With the understanding that I don't have all of the answers and I'm not an expert. I'm just a fellow person on their journey to finding themselves and healing from pouring from an empty cup for way too long. I have been sharing my experience on Instagram. That's herself, HER.S.E.L.F. Thank you, Instagram, because all the tags have already been taken. It's herself, and it's really focusing on what does radical trauma-informed self-care look like. It's investing in our minds, it's investing in our health, and it's investing in ourselves, because health is wealth. And what are we doing to bring wealth to our lives in richness of living, not necessarily monetarily, which is part of that that I am bringing to a plant wellness retreat that I'm hosting here in Colorado in August in the mountains, is to utilize these plant medicines with other achieving women, specifically entrepreneurs. You don't have to be an entrepreneur, but if any of my story resonates with you and where you're at, this is a place to experience some healing and some community. Because one of the things I learned in this, like having this conversation with you, doing healing work, trauma work, can feel very isolating. And there's so much reward that comes from being vulnerable and sharing our experience with other like-minded people who are also on the journey, to say the things I am feeling are not unique to me. This is a part of the process, and getting in the practice of opening ourselves up to each other out of that place of full authenticity, including being honest in our struggles. That's what this time is going to be for. So please follow me on Instagram. Her Highest Self Retreats is what is coming in August. I'm very excited about that. Stay tuned for information. And if you're just interested in cannabis and psychedelics and destigmatization of that, and following what I do in the industry, because I am working now in both plant medicine industries, that Instagram is Jennifer Axcell.
And I'll have links to all of that in the show notes. Jennifer, thank you for your friendship and for your time and for investing this. And I just hope, I know people out there are going to come back from burnout because of you sharing your story, and vulnerability creates connection. And I'm so grateful for you being willing to share and connect.
Thank you. I learned in the nonprofit world, and it's so true here as well. Sometimes all my job is planting the seed. I can't my job isn't to take it to the end. It's just planting the seed. And my hope is being vulnerable and open with my struggles plants the seed for someone else to say, if she can do it, shit, so can I.
Amen. Thank you, Jennifer. I love you so much.
Oh, I love you too. It's an honor to be your friend and to be on this journey alongside you, sharing life and our vulnerabilities together, and empowering each other and empowering other people out of that space. It is an honor and a pleasure.
Yay.